Yes, we are here bright and early, ready for the 2026 Gralloch. And there's some absolute madmen on the line waiting to start the 300-kilometre edition. But I'm just doing the standard UCI race today, 110 kilometres with a fair decent amount of climbing. I've got the gravel bike you all saw in my Dirty Reiver video, and yeah, it is going to be an epic day out there. And let's just hope these tyres fare a little bit better last year, as we all know how much of a disaster them punctures were. And as you can see from all the ice on my bike, it was flipping freezing camping out here overnight last night. But brushing the frost off my bike, I rode down to sign on to pick up my number and watch the start of the ultra race.
Thomas Bowers.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Before zip tying the number and transponders to my bike, ready to ride down and get lined up at the start.
Just riding down to the start now. It's definitely warmed up a bit, fortunately. Wow, it's busy with cars though. Glad we got here last night. Made it a lot easier.
The only annoying thing with these UCI gravel races is just how early you have to turn up to get lined up to ensure you're not on the back row at the start.
The bike is set up and ready to go with the number on the front and the transponder on. The one change I've made since the Dirty Reiver is I have swapped to a different chainring. This one with a slightly more generous amount of clearance. I think that's going to be safe. As you can see, the little bits of scuffing I've done from that ring that was too close. But yeah, this time I will remember to connect to my power meter, and I'll be comparing it against these machine pedals, and we'll see just how accurate it stays throughout the ride. Same gearing at the rear, and I am running some cheap unbranded chain guard at the front, which I think I've managed to set up okay. If it all goes wrong, I could take it off mid-ride. And of course, we've kept the suspension seat post on, which I'm hoping is going to be a really good change. And at the rear, we're on the Thunder Burts. Hopefully, they'll be more successful from a puncture perspective this year. Right, I think we're going to get lined up in a second.
Oh, come on. Just roll round to the start.
Perfect.
Seven, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Away we go! Men's juniors and the 19 to 34 category on their way.
And it's safe to say the race was off to a furious start, with lots of jostling for position coming off the start field, and a short bit of gravel before the first tarmac kilometre. And straight away it was incredibly fast, with some huge wattage needed to be done just to stay in the group. These gravel races always go off like crazy, and it's important to stay right up near the front in the game early on, otherwise you can get caught behind some pretty nasty splits. And as we turn onto the first gravel track, you can see I am quite deep in the field at this point, and I probably should have started this a bit further up, as there's almost no chance of moving up positions here. It's so narrow, and there's so many riders all going absolutely full gas, and to be honest with you, well above their limits. But I hold steady, keep my position, knowing this climb goes on for a good while, and I definitely would be able to make up ground further on in the race. And it is around this point I do make the conscious decision to not try and go absolutely 100% all in on this climb, and hold a little bit back just to make sure I was staying within my limits, as you know, I'm going to be out on the road for at least 3.5 hours, so I need to hold something in reserve here, even though I know I am quite good at these repeated hard efforts. And on the first descent, you can see it's all starting to get a bit fractured around where I am in the field, but I find some good wheels to follow down the descent. And thank you on the Dirty Reiver video for everyone who commented, like, you just need to start descending in the drops more. As, yeah, today, all of a sudden, my descending was 10 times better, and something just seemed to click in my head, and it wasn't anywhere near as much of a problem. I think part of it was nursing the hand injury at the Dirty Reiver, and not being able to hold the bars properly was really harming my confidence. But off the back of this short rolling section, we were going back uphill again, and at this point we had a bit of a chase group starting to establish, but I was quite a long way off the front here, so we had some real work to do. And along with that, I did have to stay laser focused as this group kept splitting as riders who'd gone out way too hard were flying backwards. And it was critical at this point I didn't get caught behind a split, having to jump round riders at several occasions. But just keep your eyes on that watt counter down in the bottom right corner. Yeah, the power numbers at the start of this race were absolutely mind-blowing. But as we were cresting the top of the first climb, we had a group of about 8 to 10 of us who were all pretty committed and working well, with a group just up ahead of us we were determined to get latched back onto. But the chase was not going to be easy. Back onto the descent, and yet again I am looking so much more confident and actually really pushing the pace here, right on the front of the group, stringing it out with people behind, even catching riders as we go, and smashing the watts every time the road went uphill. It was a bit frustrating though that I was left to do the majority of the work in this section, but I knew if we got any chance of catching that group up ahead, I really had to keep the pace on. But before long, a few other guys in the group were coaxed into coming through and pulling some really strong turns, and we started working really well as a group here. A bit later on, the pace was dropping a bit, but then this Muckle CC rider pulls through, incredibly strong, absolutely hammering it into the descent, really putting the group on its limits. But that was absolutely what we needed to get back in the game, and we were rapidly closing in on the group ahead with some pretty fast lines through these corners. And yeah, that descent was incredibly fun to hammer it down. But now we were back on my terrain, the climbs were back, and this was our chance to get across to the group before a long tarmac section where it was going to be critical to be in the draft. And as we approach the top of the climb, you can see the group up ahead getting really close now, and we launch across to get on that wheel just as we swing into the tarmac.
Well, that's the first bit of gravel done. We're on the road for a while now. We're still going pretty hard.
However, despite being on tarmac, there was no rest here, with the pace being full gas pretty much from the start, with the group absolutely lined out, everyone tucked in as much as possible. I don't know how well you can see it on the video footage, but we actually could see the group up ahead, which was the main lead group. I think there might have been 1 or 2 riders off the front of this one. Who knows, maybe we could bridge across to them on the next climb. As we swing back onto the gravel, this is a section of the course I was really nervous about coming back into the race, as this is where I punctured for the first time last year. The rocks here are really sharp and it is super dusty, so you can't really see where you're going, and the speeds into this descent are crazy high. But fortunately this year I managed to hold a line pretty cautiously without any incident. I let the wheel of the group go a little bit, knowing there was a climb out of this stretch, and easily paced back on in the climb. I just wanted to take it super cautious here, as I have bad memories from slicing my side walls open last year. The next notable part of the race was the double track section.
Oh, this is the muddy bit.
This is pretty much the only majorly technical feature of the Gralloch course, and it is a short, maybe 2 kilometre long section of proper double track, and is a really critical section around 1/3 of the way into the course. I know I'm never normally the best at riding this sort of stuff, but I was coming in with a newfound confidence on the bike, and yeah, I think I rode this section almost to perfection. I pretty much didn't lose any gap to the riders in front, stayed completely locked on the wheel, and didn't really make any mistakes. It was real testament to just how much my confidence is growing off-road, and I even found towards the end I was managing to move up the group, not letting the rocky stuff faze me at all. And once we were off the double track, then it was bombing it down, a nice fast descent into where the first aid station was.
There goes one of your 9 legs, mate.
That's 2 gone now.
Jesus. I did remember there being a sharp corner at the bottom of that one.
And at this point the group did start to lose a bit of its pace. And rolling through the aid station, it was still going really easy, even giving me a chance to pull a silly grin to the camera.
Whoa.
And as you can see, there's an absolutely huge group on my wheel here. As we approach the turnaround to the return leg of the course, I do have to pull some pretty big turns just to keep the group moving. However, we did start working a bit better here, and then once we'd navigated a full 180 U-turn onto a road and then back onto the gravel, something majorly changed about the race. And this is where 2 guys who were at the front of the 35 to 40-year-old age group caught and passed us. Now, in the past, I've whinged a bit about these different tiny age groups, all setting off at different times in gravel races. But today, I was determined to take full advantage of the situation and jump straight on their wheel, hoping they were going to help split the group. As I knew, realistically, I would probably finish towards the back of whatever group I came into the line with. So the smaller the group was, the better for me. But these guys were not messing around. They were pushing some serious watts, proper stringing the group out up every single climb. But I decided to pull a few turns with them at times, and yeah, it really did start to whittle down the group, much to my advantage. This continued for the next 10 to 20 kilometres, pretty uneventful, one by one riders dropping, and we were picking up the odd rider who dropped off the group in front. We must have been getting quite close to that main bunch ahead by this point. However, as we were approaching the final climb, this is the first moment where I showed signs of weakness. I definitely wasn't quite feeling as good in the legs here. I think I definitely pushed the pace just that little bit too hard early on, and I was definitely starting to pay for it. But I still kept the watts good and stuck with a really strong group of riders. And whilst I didn't know it at the time, looking at the splits after, I think I was in around 18th position at this point. Before we turn on to the final descent, and this is where disaster struck. I had the awful feeling of a bit of liquid sprinkling onto my calves, and immediately I knew exactly what that was. Yes, my rear tyre had sprung a bit of a leak and I was getting sprayed with tuber sealant. Fortunately for now, it was clearly quite a slow puncture and a tiny hole that I was praying it was going to seal as we were bombing it down that final descent. But by the time we got to the bottom of the descent, I realised, yeah, it was just getting too soft to manage the 15k or so on tarmac into the finish. And I decided, as we were passing under the Red Bull banner, to stop and put a plug in it. In hindsight, I've realised that I definitely should have had all my puncture repair gear set up better to go, as I had it all nice and organised and neatly packed in a Ziploc bag. But when I was stopped trying to repair this puncture, yeah, it was all a bit of a pain to get out the bag, put the hose into my pump and get everything set up. If I'd have left it set up ready with a plug in the applicator and the pump ready to go, I could have got this done in maybe 30 to 60 seconds. But in the end, it took me a good few minutes to do all the faffing.
Blooming puncture.
However, I don't think I lost too much time and was back moving pretty quickly. But the big shame was, unfortunately, in that process, I had managed to lose my group. And the most hilarious part of it all was where I'd stopped between these two Red Bull banners was a 400 metre sprint section where there was a special classification for the fastest rider of the day. I reckon I must have come absolutely dead last in that one. But we were onto the tarmac and it was time to lock in ahead of the final push to the finish line.
That was such a terrible moment, that. Oh well, let's ride it in. About 10k on tarmac to go. We'll see if it stays up with the plug.
And the worst part about having to stop to mend that puncture wasn't just the time it took by the side of the road, but it was the fact I was now solo on the final fast road section for about 10 kilometres, battling into an absolute block headwind where, as you can see, speeds were really high. And unfortunately, this is the sort of place where you are far faster in a group. I do manage to keep it nice and low and aero through here though, and I think I do a pretty good effort, but before long, as we're coming up the climb out from the riverbed, I notice a group charging furiously behind me, which I was hoping was going to be an older age group, but I started to recognise a few of the guys as people I'd dropped earlier in the day. So unfortunately, I could be losing a fair few positions here. I kept the pace on, but yeah, before long they'd caught me, and now was my time to try and sit in and work with them. They were getting a bit antsy here though, with a few of them launching attacks and people looking around, not sure who to close it. And in the end, I ended up letting a few of them go, as I was completely cooked from that solo effort on the flat beforehand. Unfortunately, the one guy left with me wasn't in my age group, so I could take my time and enjoy soaking up the atmosphere as I rolled across the line to finish.
For the women's elite is Carolina Migon. The
Women's elite is Carolina Migon. The pole over the three-hour version. Who's led that quartet through ahead of G.
Carolina Migon, so the start, I think she's a bit of an outlier for us.
a winner here in 2004 riding for
That's so annoying having that puncture
Super strong.
on that last descent. Oh well, we got around it. I think I was alright. Right, well, it is all done and dusted. I think I was 27th, which is a bit of a shame because and I definitely got a top 20 if I hadn't have punctured there. But actually, the fix worked pretty well, and just whacking that plug in was pretty successful. It did seal, which I was a bit worried about, to be honest with you. However, I think I need to get some food in me now and recover a bit. But what a day out that was. Way better than last year anyway. They definitely do know how to put on a good event here, I have to say. It's always a proper organisation. Well, despite the puncture, still got the special medal.
But realistically, I'm probably not getting out to Australia for the Worlds this year. It's just that bit too far to travel for one race, and it would mean I'd have to miss the National Hill Climb.
It's nice to have, and another one for the collection.
Now the dust has well and truly settled, and before I leave you all, what an epic day of racing that was. I am so proud of my performance, and it wasn't just my positional result. My numbers were looking incredible as well. In the end, despite the big shame with the puncture, I managed to come 27th in the senior 19 to 35 men category, and I clocked a time of 3 hours, 33 minutes and 59 seconds. Only around 9 minutes slower than the actual winners of my race, which I was really impressed with. Who knows, if I hadn't have had that puncture, how much better could I have really done? Looking at the results and the guys I was riding with, I probably would have been comfortably in the top 20. So yeah, it is quite the shame. But I'm not going to let that put a damper on my day. If I look at my power file, it is absolutely mind-blowing. I have never seen numbers this crazy. My average power for the full 3.5 hours was 273 watts, with my normalised power being 296 watts. That's nearly 300 watts normalised for 3.5 hours. A few years ago, that would have been a good performance for 20-30 minutes or so. So yeah, what a day that was, and true testament to how much my form's come on. And that's not the only part of the story. If I look at my power zone distribution, I can see I spent nearly 50 minutes of the race pushing above 350 watts. And if you look at the footage, you can see just how much time I'm spent right in that red zone, well up above 400. Yeah, it was a brutal day out, but really, really confidence inspiring going forwards. And the fact I only had one short moment of weakness on that final gravel climb is real testament to just how good my durability is getting. Yes, I know the Dirty Reiver was impressive, but I think this was on another level entirely, as the competition here was certainly a lot stronger. And the fact, of course, this actually is a race. So without a question, of course, I've qualified for the World Champs, but as I said before, Australia is a long way off, and it would mean missing, of course, the premier event in the UK, the National Hill Climb. So yeah, it's going to take a bit of persuasion to get me out to Australia in time for that. And to everyone who said hello at the weekend, thank you so much for the support. I really appreciated chatting to every single one of you. And honestly, it feels so alien now that I go to events and people know who I am. And yeah, it's just making this whole YouTube channel feel so much more legitimate, which with some of the big things to come, I am super grateful of. I'm not quite sure of my racing schedule over the next few months. I've got quite a few family commitments, including going to support my partner Ellie as she attempts to run her first ever marathon just 2 years after surviving a stroke. I'll leave a link to her fundraiser in the description if you're interested in checking it out. Her comeback is a true amazing story, and it's one that absolutely dwarfs anything I'm doing on my bike. But other than that, as always, get yourself subscribed if you're not already, and I will see you all in the next one.